We hear this surprisingly often. My city built bike lanes, but cyclists don't actually use them. They just ride on the road or the sidewalk instead. It's hard to know what to make of this. From our perspective, if the road or sidewalk is more appealing than the bike lane, there's probably something wrong with the bike lane. Imagine if most drivers chose a gravel road over a nearby highway for their commute. It makes so little sense that there must be something wrong with the highway. At least that's our first reaction. For this video, we decided to get out our clipboards, put on our research hats, and go collect some data on how commonly cyclists ignore bike lanes and why they do it.
We start our experiment in Toronto on Bloor Street, where we counted cyclists for a half hour on a Sunday evening. Unfortunately, standing near a parking-protected bike lane results in people thinking you know anything about how Toronto parking meters work. Sorry, no idea, but best of luck. Of the 51 cyclists that we recorded going east, 46 or 90% used the bike lane as you'd expect. The other 5 rode in the street with cars. 1 was turning left to get to a shop on the other side of the street, which is hard to fault. 1 temporarily used the road to pass slower cyclists in the bike lane, and 3 were purely biking down the middle of the road. Mainly for speed, but 1 guy just leisurely biked down the middle of the road for no particular reason that we could tell.
What we saw here in riding around Toronto is that these bike lanes are used by the vast majority of cyclists. However, some do use the road for speed, whether temporarily to pass, or they just fully use the road. Typically, it's sports cyclists or delivery riders who have an obvious reason to go fast. Is this a problem? Passing seems like fair game, as long as you're aware of cars around you, because drivers won't expect someone leaving the bike lane. We're less enthusiastic about seeing cyclists fully using the road, but maybe we're biased by the fact that we and most other cyclists find it unpleasant being that close to cars. If they're actually matching the speed of cars, though, maybe that is the right place for them? Get us up to speed in the comments.
For our next location, we teleport back to Ottawa to go on top of a parking garage to get a good vantage point of both directions of the Laurier Street bike lanes downtown. Our controversial urbanist opinion is that parking garages are good for cities because they're an excellent place to get footage for YouTube. Over a half hour on a Thursday late afternoon, we counted 54 cyclists, about the same as in Toronto, although this covered both directions instead of just one. 52 of them, 96%, used the bike lane. Of the 2 cyclists that didn't, 1 was biking really fast down the middle of the street, just like in Toronto, and the other was slowly biking on the sidewalk, on his way to the bike lane on the other side of the street. It seemed fair enough, but we had to count it.
The difference between Toronto and Ottawa here wasn't that big. Toronto just had a few more people leave bike lanes behind in their need for speed. It might have been a fluke, but the higher bike traffic in Toronto could also be pushing faster cyclists to opt out of the bike lane. These Toronto lanes aren't exactly narrow, but Montreal has some wider lanes that can handle more cyclists and more different speeds.
Our quest to investigate these reports of rogue cyclists takes us to a more suburban environment in the east of Ottawa on Ogilvie Road. What looks like the shoulder of this suburban arterial is in fact technically a bike lane, and it's where we again counted cyclists in both directions for a half hour on a Friday, late afternoon. No surprise, fewer cyclists than before, just 16 in total. We also saw less use of the bike lane, at just 81%, but instead of riding on the road, our 3 rogue cyclists used the sidewalk. This is completely understandable, and we were actually surprised more didn't use the sidewalk, because we did for part of the way to get there. The sidewalk is bumpy and unpleasant, but the painted bike lane on the suburban arterial is downright awful. On the bright side, we only had someone yell at us from a truck once.
People often tell us that we're very positive or optimistic, as far as urbanist YouTube channels go. For that, we can only thank or blame our parents. But it's also because we try pretty hard to seek out older, more walkable, bike-friendly, and transit-friendly places when we decide where to live or spend time. Lots of people can't do this because of work, school, or family obligations, but we're really grateful that we've been able to generally pull it off. But every time we need to bike through environments like this, it's honestly hard not to be overtaken by anger at how urban design came to be so hostile to anyone outside of a car. It's impressive seeing people out on their bikes actually making it work. If they can do that despite the hostile environment, imagine what we'd see if all of this space, and there is so much space here, was remade into something more people-friendly. Wait a second, damn it, we're making this hopeful again.
For our 4th and final stop, on this roller coaster of infrastructure and emotions, we head to the Rideau Canal in central Ottawa, where we look for the sports cyclists we often see using the parkway with cars, instead of the multi-use pathways with other cyclists and pedestrians. And we did find some. We counted 10 cyclists on the parkway over the course of a half hour on a Saturday late morning. But this compares to 123 cyclists on the multi-use pathway, which isn't even counting this other adjacent pathway through a park that was too much of a hassle to count. That works out to 93% using the bike lane on the Rideau Canal. And multi-use pathways aren't even actually bike lanes, they're shared pathways often filled with pedestrians. At least in our city, they also have a low speed limit of 20 kilometers or 12 miles per hour. Not only is it understandable for sports cyclists to use the road here, technically it's the only legal option.
In this video, we tried to dig deeper into the claims we've heard of cyclists just ignoring bike lanes. We looked at 4 different environments in 2 cities and just didn't find it to be all that common. More than 9 in 10 use the bike lane. To be fair, drivers probably notice the exceptions because they're paying attention to their own lane and not to all the cyclists using the bike lane. But our numbers just don't support the idea that there's no point in building bike infrastructure, especially if it's quality bike infrastructure. Ogilvy Road saw the lowest number of cyclists and the lowest percentage of cyclists using the bike lane because, well, the experience of cycling with zero protection on a fast suburban arterial really sucks.
Thanks for watching through to the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Yeah, we brought back that classic. This video was brought to you by our supporters on Patreon.